How are you doing? I'm Tom, and today we're setting up this Ruger M77 for deer season. And this is a Ruger M77 Mark II with the Zytel stock, skeleton stock, boat paddle stock, whatever you want to call it. It's been called a lot of things. And I went over this rifle in detail in a gun review earlier. Well, now I want to set it up for this coming deer season. And it's just something I enjoy, and I thought y'all might enjoy my thought process on this. And let me say, setting up a rifle for me, it's not you just go get a gun, a scope, slap it together, and you're ready. For me, setting up a rifle is a process. You do the best you can in picking out what you think you're going to need, and you go try it. And every rifle's different, and maybe where you hunt changes or how you hunt changes. So, things change. Rifles are different. Scopes are different. We all learn as we go, hopefully. And you need to make changes to your equipment, as everything else is changing and as you're learning. Well, this process for me, I've shot this rifle a few times. I learned that it's got a lot sharper drop on the comb than I thought once you mount your scope. All right, so that's an issue. Nothing that can't be overcome, but it's just, something I learned about this rifle. Plus, there's where I'm going to use this rifle. All right. Normally, when I get a new rifle, I've got a specific use for it in mind. I'm going to hunt in the woods with it, or I'm going to hunt intermediate ranges, or I'm going to hunt long range with it. With this particular rifle, I don't have any particular, way of hunting in mind for this. I got this rifle just for those really bad days. What it's made for, it's all-weather rifle. So this is for those days that it's sleeting and raining and miserable weather. As a result, I could be using this rifle in any number of places, and therefore I want to set it up so that it's a really versatile rifle. And let's start with the scope, since we're talking about versatility, because I struggled on the scope. I couldn't decide between a 3x9 or a 4x12 for this rifle. 3x9 is better short range scope. 4x12 is better long range scope, at least my way of thinking and how I hunt. Well, I'm going to put the 4x12 on here. I can go down to 4 power with that, and that works in the woods. A 3 power is a lot better. But I don't plan on being in the woods too much on those bad days. That's the days I want to be on a nice clear cut or cut over or a field or something like that. Hopefully in a stand, with something keeping me out of the rain. So that being said, I like having that higher power magnification if I need it. So I opted for a 4x12. And like I said, it's a process. After this deer season, I might find myself only having used this in the woods. I might go to a 3x9 next year. It depends on how it works out. This is my starting point, you might say. So it's what I'm thinking now and what I'm going to try. So I've got a brand new Redfield here. And I mentioned in a couple of videos before, I really like these Redfield Revolution scopes. I think they're a good hunting scope. It's not anything I would recommend for, tactical, long range shooting or anything like that. Something where you're, clicking your turrets and changing your elevation and all that good stuff. But for just standard hunting, I really like these scopes, and I think they're a great value. So we're going to start by mounting this. One thing I noticed on the Ruger, and this goes back to what I was saying, all rifles are different. If you look, there is not much clearance on this barrel right here. Now, the rings came with this rifle. And I really don't want to go buy a new set of stainless Ruger rings if I don't have to. They're pretty pricey. Great rings, but they're kind of pricey. All right. These are lows. I'm guessing they're lows. But just due to the way the action's made and the taper of the barrel and so forth, I don't have a lot of room in here for clearance when I put a scope on here. So that's where this 40mm objective really comes in. If I went with a larger objective, I'd have to get higher rings. And I already don't have much of a cheek weld due to the way, I've got a lot of drop on the comb here. All right, so this comb's really low. I don't have a great cheek weld. I don't want to go with higher rings. So going with the standard 1-inch tube, 40mm objective, I can get my scope down nice and low on this rifle, which it just works out well for this rifle especially. All right, so let's get this mounted on here. These rings do have the flathead screws in them, and I'm really not that crazy about the flathead screws. I'd rather have torque screws. And I might replace these at some point. My buddy Joey, I think you might have saw him in a video or two at the range. He did replace his flathead screws with torque screws, and I thought that was a pretty good idea. So I got to give him credit for just going ahead and doing it. Now I need to level the scope and get the distance set on it. All right, well, this is a long action rifle. And the scopes now are really short compared to what they used to be. So I don't have a lot of adjustment this way. Now, fortunately, this scope has a lot of eye relief, so I got a lot of flexibility there. And this scope could actually go forward. The problem is now my numbers are starting to get under the rings here. They're hard to see. And that's something a lot of you need to keep in mind. It's, like I said, well, with the long action rifles, it's just getting tougher and tougher to get your scope at just the right distance from your eye. Just again, the scopes are getting so short now, you just don't have the options you used to there. Now I need to level the scope. All right, now a lot of y'all are not gonna agree with this, but I don't use levels, I just eyeball it. All right, and here's my thinking. I know I can hear a lot of y'all shaking y'all's heads now. All right, when you use the levels, well, first of all, the levels are hard to use because it's hard to find a flat spot on your receiver to put your level. All right, well, even then, you're still eyeballing it. You're looking at a bubble floating between two lines, so still you're visually looking at it to make sure your level's right. Well, I'm doing the same thing by just eyeballing it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off from the rifle. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to square up the rifle in the stand here. I'm going to look at the stock and make sure it's perfectly vertical. And that is really close right there. Now I'm going to look at the crosshair and see how it is relative to the stock, but from 2 feet back. I'm not looking through the scope trying to do this. And you'll be amazed at how well you can line this up just eyeballing it like this once you back off from the rifle and you're not trying to shoulder it and look through the crosshairs. Okay, now I need to tighten down my rings. I've got my distance this way right. I've got it level. What I do when I'm tightening down the rings, I start with one side and I run one screw all the way down. All right, so this screws all the way down and there's absolutely no gap in the ring on this side. Now I want to back off half of a turn. Now I'm going to run down the screw on the opposite side all the way down. And then I'm going to To check for the gap, you want your gap even on each side for your rings. I'm going to use my thumbnails. And you'll be amazed at just how even you can get it with your thumbnails. Your fingers are extremely sensitive. And you can feel things that you can't hardly see. So this is actually a pretty good method here. And I can tell I got just a hair more gap on my right side, and I mean just a hair. So I basically backed off 1/8 of a turn there. Is that one a little too much? That's just about perfect right there. Now I want to do the same thing for the back. And notice I'm not using a torque wrench. All right, torque wrench is made to keep you from over tightening it. That's what a torque wrench is for. It's not to make sure you're too loose. All right, I'm just using a screwdriver and I'm just using my fingertips and I'm just going around and snugging each screw. These screws have real fine machine threads and they're not prone to loosening up. I want my bases tighter, but on these rings, it doesn't take much. Now the next thing I want to do on this rifle, and truthfully I should have did this before I mounted the scope, but you know how that goes. I need to set the dioptic on the scope because it's a brand new scope. All right. And what you're doing when you set the dioptic, and a lot of people don't understand this part, but okay, your dioptic is basically your crosshair. You're making sure your crosshair is in focus. Now most people want to turn the bell until whatever they're looking at comes into focus. Well, that's not how you're supposed to do it. You turn the bell until the crosshair is in focus. And in turn, you'll be amazed at how much crisper your image downrange is also. All right. Well, it's kind of tricky setting your dioptic because your eye it wants to adjust. All right, so the best way to do it is to take a scope, not on a rifle, and literally just hold the scope up quickly and bring it down. Because if you hold the scope in position while you're looking through it, your eye's just going to adjust automatically. Well, you want it so when you bring the scope up, your eye doesn't have to adjust. You want it just crisp and clear as soon as you throw it up. And again, once you get that dioptic set right, the downrange image takes care of itself after that. All right. Well, since I've already mounted the scope, I've got to throw the rifle up real quick. And the dioptic on here is just a little bit off. So I'm going to loosen this lock ring. And when I say it's a little bit off to my eye. Every eye is unique and different and so forth. That's why everybody needs to set the dioptic on their scope. That's pretty good right there. All right, so I'm going to lock this lock ring back in place. Oh yeah, it's pretty good. And it's best to do this against a white wall. You can do it against a blue sky, not at the sun, but at a blue sky. But a white wall, just sheetrock wall, that just works really good because you get such a good contrast between the black and the reticles and the wall. Now for this particular rifle, I mentioned there's a large drop on the comb here. It drops down a lot from the scope, so I don't have much of a cheek weld. Now I went over a product in a previous video, the Beartooth Products comb raising kit. Great product for wooden stock because it allows you to adjust the height of your comb. With this particular rifle, that's not a good product for. That's a great product for wooden stock, normal wooden stock rifle. With this one, all right, your sling swivels, they're built into the rifle, so you don't have studs sticking out of the stock like you would on most rifles. All right, so these are stainless, they're built into the stock. All right, so that bare tooth comb raising kit, it's got a cutout for your sling studs. Again, it's not a stud. So if I slid it up here, I got a problem here. I might could make this come through, but I don't know. Plus this stock's got this cutaway here, just the way it was made and designed. So that, I'm thinking that just probably isn't the best way to go for this stock, but I still want to raise the comb a little bit. So I'm going to slap an ammo holder on here. And I've done this as a temporary fix on some other rifles. And this particular one is a Hornady. And I'm going to put this on here and just see how it fits. All right, and the great thing about the ammo holders, I've got plenty of clearance here. And so I got plenty of clearance. It's adjustable, so I can move this a little bit more forward and make sure I've got plenty of clearance here for my sling swivel. And as far as fit, that's a lot better there. Adds a little weight to it in the rear, so it doesn't balance quite as nice, but it's already a little light in the rear anyway on this particular rifle, just because of the Zytel stock. So yeah, we still got really good balance here. As far as the sling for this rifle, truthfully, I have no idea what I'm going to do here. As I mentioned, the sling swivels, they're built into the stock on this one. All right, so that automatically eliminates anything that's already got the sling swivels built in that you just attach to a stud. All right, and I kind of like the super slings. They're a good sling. They're not great. They tend to want to slip on your shoulder a good bit because of the nylon, but they're just really convenient and handy. You can pull them and it draws them up tight, so the gun stores well in a case when you're carrying it, when you get to your spot or whatever and you want to hunt. It loosens up real quick. It's on your shoulder, you're hunting. And I used to really love the leather slings, the old military style slings. All right, and there's advantages to these. You can loop the sling around your arm while it's attached to the rifle, and that really helps with support for shooting. Well, I don't shoot that way anymore. I did at one time. I shot competitively in high school on a rifle team, and we actually used slings like that when shooting. Well, for hunting, that's, you're not really going to take the time to undo your sling and slip it on your arm and all that. Hunting, you've got to make the shot pretty quick. So usually I just end up doing a hasty sling, which is, if I use a sling at all, which is where you just run your arm through and wrap it around and you're shooting. The Cobra style slings, the slings that, they flare out as it comes up, those are really comfortable, especially for carrying a rifle any distance, especially a heavy rifle. But I prefer just a standard width sling just because it's so much easier to get it in a hasty sling for quick shots. It's just personal preference here. So really I had no idea what I'm going to do with this rifle as far as a sling, but I'm going to experiment with a few things. And I wouldn't want to use leather on this one for another reason. I mentioned earlier, this rifle's just for bad weather. Well, I don't want to be out there in leather slings soaking wet, and then when it dries, it's it ain't the greatest thing in the world. And I love a leather sling, but that just, I don't think would be a good option for this rifle. Slings, they're as subjective as it gets, and it's whatever you like and want to use. But I'm going to play with this one a little bit between now and season and see if I can't figure something out here. And I'll let y'all know what I come up with. And finally, we need to talk bullets. And I did a video before on letting your rifle choose your bullet weight. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to let this rifle choose the bullet weight. With that said, though, sometimes you know, some bullets might work better at a certain weight than others. Being this is a 270, and I'm going to use this rifle in a variety of places, I would rather not use a 130 grain bullet. All right, I don't want that much velocity. I don't want overkill on my deer when I shoot it. I don't want to blow the shoulder off. Now, I'm reloading, so I can back off on the max charge, and I'm going to try a 130 grain bullet just to see if it likes it. And I've got a 130 grain Spear hot core here. I would prefer to shoot a 140 grain bullet though. And I've got some from when I was doing load testing on a Ruger #1, I've gotten 270. So I've got some 140 grain AccuBonds. AccuBonds are pretty expensive. Anything with nozzle written on it's pretty expensive, and truthfully, you don't need nothing this expensive to go kill a deer with. Remington Core Locks and Winchester PowerPoints, you know, they've been getting the job done really well for a long time. But I just happen to have some of these left over, and when I was working on that #1, I wanted to try the nozzlers just because they shoot so good. And I'm setting that one up more for longer ranges, and I really wanted, you know, some really great groups out of that rifle. This rifle, I'm not as concerned because, you know, I'm going to be using it. I'm not going long distance with it. Again, it's for bad weather. You don't want to try to track a deer, you know, on one of those days where it's drizzling and raining and wet and cold and sleeting. You don't want to be making a 300-yard shot on a deer, then getting down there 300 yards and trying to figure out, okay, exactly where was he standing when I shot. Because it's going to look a lot different when you get there from where you started. And it's a lot harder to pick up blood and hair and track a deer when it's wet. So, you know, this is going to be more intermediate range type stuff mainly. And I would prefer slower velocities for that. I don't need the, you know, 3,100 feet per second that I could get out of this 130 grain bullet. So we're going to try the 140 grain AccuBond. We'll try the 130. We'll see how they shoot. I might try 150 grain. I just happen to have these on hand. And we'll see what we come up with. I'll let the rifle decide, you know, and just I'll make a judgment call there. And as far as the AccuBonds, they're a good tough bullet, and what I like about them is they stay together at high velocity. But again, I'm not going to use this one at high velocity unless it just really shoots great, you know, close to its max load. So I don't need the tougher bullet, I just happen to have some. But you know, that's another thing when I was talking about setting up a rifle as a process. Same way with the bullets. You know, that's part of setting it up, figuring out the bullet for your rifle. You want to try different bullets. You want to see how they shoot. But then you want to evaluate how they do while you're actually shooting deer. Did the bullet perform like you wanted it to? All right, so that's what I mean. It's an ongoing process. All right, I'll try whatever bullet this gun likes. And then I'll see, you know, how did that bullet perform on deer. If it didn't do what I wanted, I'll find another bullet. All right. It's probably going to take me a couple of seasons just to get the absolute bullet, you know, perfect bullet for it. But I'll get there. And all right, this is something else too I need to throw in there. I'm nitpicking on most of the stuff. All right, I'm shooting for perfection here, and for me, that's part of the enjoyment of setting up a rifle. It's getting it as close to what I think perfection is. Well, that's just my opinion on what perfection is. Your opinion could be entirely different. I mean, you don't hunt where I hunt or how I hunt, and you might not expect what I expect or want. All right, so I'm trying to get it to what I think is perfection. And, you know, you'll just have to figure out what you think that is, just trial and error for yourself. I can say I'm confident any of these bullets are going to work. So it's not like I'm worried about, you know, I'm not worried about going out there and I shot it with this bullet and I lost my deer. Okay, they're all going to work because I know I'm going to put the bullet where it needs to go, and they're all hunting bullets. Just some bullets are going to work a little better than others. So I'm looking for every little thing I can find that just gives me a little bit of an edge. And then that's what I think of as perfection in a hunting rifle. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. It just seemed like a perfect morning to get out here to the shop and set up a deer rifle. Like I said, I just enjoy doing that. And as I make changes to this rifle and also the Winchester Model 70 that I've been setting up and tinkering with, as I make changes and learn things, I'll make sure I post those videos later on, letting you know what I figured out or changed and why and so forth. So if you want to see any of those videos, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to be notified. And as far as other stuff we're doing here at the channel, I've been focusing on self-defense for the last couple of videos, and that's because Mrs. Rivers decided to get her concealed weapons permit. You know, there's a lot going on right now. So I'm looking for a pistol for her right now, something pretty specific, and it might take me a little while to find one. Who would have guessed guns would be so hard to get right now? I didn't see this coming, which I was generally, you know, pretty prepared on my firearms, but I wasn't expecting to look for something for her, and especially what I'm looking for is not the easiest to find. But if you want to see future videos on that, again, hit the subscribe button. And if you like the video, hey, give me a thumbs up. It helps out the channel. And if you didn't, give me a thumbs up because it lets YouTube know you like shooting and hunting videos. And I think that covered it on this rifle, at least for today. God bless and have a good day.